The stolen money felt like fire against Natalie's ribs as she stumbled through the saloon doors into the blazing Arizona heat, her breath coming in ragged gasps that had nothing to do with the stifling temperature of rawhide in July 1878. Behind her, men were shouting, their angry voices mixing with the thunder of boots on wooden floors, and she knew she had maybe 5 minutes before they realized where she had gone. The leather satchel pressed against her side beneath her dusty blue traveling dress contained $3,000 that legally belonged to Marcus Hutchinson, the man who had promised to marry her, the man who had beaten her so badly last week that she still could not take a full breath without her ribs screaming in protest. She had not stolen the money out of greed or spite. She had taken what was owed to her, what Marcus had promised would be hers when they married, before she discovered he already had a wife in Santa Fe and 2 more in Tucson. Before she learned that his business was not cattle, but rather the selling of young women to brothels across the territory. Before she understood that she was meant to be his next commodity, not his bride. Natalie pressed herself against the side of the general store, her brown hair sticking to her neck with sweat, her green eyes scanning the dusty street for any sign of pursuit. A horse whinnied nearby, and she flinched, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. She had no plan beyond getting out of rawhide, no destination except away, no companion except the desperate hope that somewhere in this vast Arizona territory there might be a place where Marcus could not find her. Looking for something, miss. The voice came from her left, low and measured, and Natalie spun so fast she nearly lost her balance. The man standing in the shadow of the store's overhang was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that seemed to block out half the sun. He wore dusty trail clothes, a worn leather vest over a dark shirt, and a hat that had seen better days. His face was weathered by sun and wind, probably placing him somewhere in his mid-20s, with a strong jaw covered in a few days' worth of stubble and eyes that were an unusual shade of gray, like storm clouds over the desert. "I am fine," Natalie said, hating how her voice shook. "Just getting some air. In a town where you are clearly terrified," the man said, not moving from his spot. "And where men are about to come pouring out of that saloon looking for someone. Would that someone be you?" Natalie's hand tightened on the satchel beneath her dress. "I do not know what you mean." "Sure you do not." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "I have been watching that saloon for the better part of an hour, waiting for a friend who never showed. Saw you slip out looking like the devil himself was on your heels." Now I hear Marcus Hutchinson's voice rising above the others, and that man does not raise his voice unless he has lost something valuable. "You know Marcus." Fear shot through Natalie like lightning. "Know of him," the man corrected. "Which is enough to know that if you took something from him, you probably had good reason. Name is Samuel Wright. Most people call me Sam." "I do not need your help," Natalie said, even as she heard the saloon doors bang open behind her. Male voices filled the street, Marcus's above them all, shouting orders. "Maybe not," Sam said, "but you are going to get it anyway. My horse is around the corner. Can you ride?" "I said I do not need your help. And I heard you. But those men are going to round this corner in about 30 seconds, and when they do, you will need to decide if your pride is worth your life." His gray eyes held her steadily. "I am offering you a choice. Take it or leave it, but decide fast." Natalie could hear footsteps now, multiple sets, coming closer. Her mind raced through options she did not have. She could not outrun them. She could not hide effectively in a town this size. She had no weapon, no allies, no skills that would save her from 6 angry men led by someone as ruthless as Marcus. "Why would you help me?" she whispered. Because my mother ran from my father when I was 10 years old, Sam said quietly, and no one helped her. By the time she stopped running, she was dead. So when I see a woman fleeing with that look in her eyes, I help. Now come on. He did not wait for her agreement, just turned and walked with long, purposeful strides toward the corner of the building. Natalie hesitated for only a heartbeat before following, hiking up her skirts and running after him. Behind her, Marcus's voice grew louder, closer, angrier. Sam's horse was a large bay gelding with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor despite the chaos erupting in the street. Sam was already untying the reins from the hitching post when Natalie reached him. He swung up into the saddle with practiced ease, then extended his hand down to her. "Put your foot on mine and grab my arm," he instructed. Natalie had ridden before, though never like this, never running for her life. She did as Sam said, placing her boot on his and gripping his forearm. He pulled her up behind him with surprising strength, and she barely had time to settle before he was urging the horse forward. "Hold on tight," Sam said over his shoulder. Natalie wrapped her arms around his waist just as the horse broke into a canter, then a gallop. Behind them, she heard shouting, heard Marcus screaming her name, heard the sharp crack of a gunshot that made her bury her face against Sam's back. "They are shooting at us," she gasped. "They are shooting at the sky," Sam corrected, guiding his horse between buildings and out toward the open desert. "Marcus knows better than to kill a horse in this territory. Horse theft carries a hanging sentence, but murder can be negotiated. Keep your head down anyway." The town of Rawhide fell away behind them as Sam urged his horse into the scrubland beyond. The Arizona landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, all red rock and scattered sage, mountains rising in the distance like sleeping giants. The July sun beat down mercilessly, but Sam seemed to know where he was going, following trails that Natalie could not see, guiding his horse with the confidence of someone who had traveled this land many times before. They rode hard for what felt like hours but was probably only one, until the horse was lathered with sweat and breathing heavily. Finally, Sam slowed to a walk, then to a stop near a cluster of rocks that provided some shade. He dismounted first, then helped Natalie down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, adrenaline giving way to exhaustion. "We need to let him rest," Sam said, already loosening the saddle girth to give the horse some relief. "There is a water source about 2 miles west. We will make for that once he has caught his breath." Natalie leaned against the rocks, her whole body trembling. The reality of what had just happened was beginning to sink in. She had fled Rawhide with stolen money, had accepted help from a complete stranger, and was now alone in the desert with a man she did not know. Any one of those facts should have terrified her, but all she felt was a strange, hollow numbness. "Thank you," she finally managed to say. Sam glanced at her while running his hands over the horse's legs, checking for any sign of strain. "Do not thank me yet. We are not clear by a long shot. Marcus Hutchinson is not known for letting things go, especially things he considers his property." "I am not his property," Natalie said sharply. "I know that. But does he?" The question hung in the hot air between them. Natalie looked away, her hand unconsciously moving to her ribs where the bruises still throbbed. "I was supposed to marry him. 3 weeks ago, everything was arranged. Then I discovered the truth about him, about what he really does, what he intended to do with me." "You do not have to explain," Sam said quietly, straightening up and giving the horse a final pat. "I have heard enough about Marcus Hutchinson to fill in the blanks. The money you took, was it his?" Natalie hesitated, then nodded. "He promised me $3,000 as a marriage settlement. Said it would be mine to do with as I pleased, that we would use it to buy a ranch. But it was all lies. He was never going to marry me. I was just another girl he was going to sell. So I took what he owed me and left. Good, Sam said simply. A man like that does not deserve the money or the woman. But now he will come after me. He will not stop until he finds me. Sam pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. Probably. Which is why we need to put as much distance between us and Rawhide as possible. I have a place up in the mountains near Prescott. It is remote, hard to find if you do not know where you are looking. You can stay there until things cool down. You would do that. For a stranger, I already did, Sam pointed out. Helped you escape, made myself an enemy of Marcus Hutchinson in the process. Might as well see it through. He paused, then added more softly, besides, you remind me of her, my mother. She had that same look in her eyes, that mixture of fear and determination. I could not help her, but maybe I can help you. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, the first she had allowed herself since discovering Marcus's betrayal. I do not even know how to repay you. Do not worry about that now. Right now, we need to focus on staying alive and staying ahead of whoever Marcus sends after us. Sam checked the sun's position, then looked back at her. Can you ride for another few hours? I know you are exhausted, but the more ground we cover today, the better. I can ride, Natalie said, straightening up despite the exhaustion that made her bones feel like lead. I will not slow you down. Something that might have been respect flickered in Sam's gray eyes. I did not think you would. He gestured to a canteen hanging from his saddle. Drink some water first, then we will head out. The water was warm but wonderful, soothing her parched throat. As she drank, she studied Sam more carefully. He was young, probably not much older than her own 22 years, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had lived hard and learned harsh lessons. His hands were calloused from work, his face tanned and lined at the corners of his eyes from squinting against the sun. He wore his gun low on his hip with the ease of someone comfortable with the weapon, but he had not drawn it during their escape, had not added to the violence even when given cause. Why were you in Rawhide? She asked, handing the canteen back. Looking for work, mostly. I am a ranch hand by trade, sometimes a scout if the pay is good enough. Heard there might be something near Rawhide, but the job fell through. Was about to head back north when I saw you. Lucky for me. Maybe, or maybe lucky for both of us, I have been alone on the trail for a long time. Company, even reluctant company, is not the worst thing in the world. There was something in the way he said it, a loneliness that matched her own that made Natalie's chest tighten. She had been alone too, even when surrounded by people. Her parents had died of cholera when she was 17, leaving her with nothing but debt and a trunk of clothes. She had worked as a seamstress in Tucson for 3 years, saving every penny, dreaming of a better life. When Marcus had walked into the shop and started courting her, she had thought her dreams were finally coming true. Instead, they had turned into nightmares. We should go, Sam said, tightening the saddle girth again. We will ride easier now, let the horse set the pace. There is a canyon about 10 miles northwest where we can camp for the night. It will be defensible if we need it to be, and there is water and grass for the horse. They rode through the afternoon, the landscape changing gradually as they climbed in elevation. The flatlands gave way to rolling hills studded with juniper and pinyon pine, the air cooling slightly as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. Sam proved to be a quiet companion, speaking only when necessary, his attention constantly scanning their surroundings for any sign of pursuit. Natalie found herself relaxing slightly against his back, her arms around his waist becoming less about holding on and more about the comfort of another human being. She could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, the solid warmth of his body, and for the first time in weeks, She felt something like safety. As the sun began to set, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and purple, Sam guided the horse into a narrow canyon with high walls that blocked the wind. A small spring bubbled from the rocks at the far end, creating a pool of clear water surrounded by grass. It was a hidden oasis, the kind of place that could only be found by someone who knew the land intimately. "This is beautiful," Natalie breathed as Sam helped her dismount. "It is one of my favorite spots," Sam admitted. "I stumbled across it a few years back while tracking a lost calf." The rancher I was working for said I could keep it secret if I wanted, and I did. Not many people know it is here. While Sam tended to the horse, Natalie explored the small canyon. Evening primrose was beginning to bloom along the water's edge, and she could hear the chirp of crickets starting their nightly song. The walls of the canyon were striped with layers of red and cream-colored stone, evidence of millions of years of geological history. After the chaos and fear of the day, this quiet place felt like a benediction. "Are you hungry?" Sam called out. "I have some dried beef and cornbread in my saddlebags. Not much, but it will keep us going until we can get proper supplies." They ate sitting on rocks near the spring, the simple food tasting better than any fancy meal Natalie could remember. As darkness fell and stars began to appear in the strip of sky visible between the canyon walls, Sam built a small fire that he kept low and almost smokeless. "Will they be able to see it?" Natalie asked nervously. "No, the canyon walls block the light, and I am using dry wood that does not smoke much. We will be safe enough here for the night." Sam poked at the fire with a stick, his face thoughtful in the flickering light. "Tomorrow we will need to decide on a plan. I can get you to my place in the mountains, but after that you will need to figure out what comes next. Do you have family anywhere? Friends who would take you in?" "No," Natalie said quietly. "No family, no friends outside of Rawhide, and I cannot go back there. I have the money Marcus promised me so I can support myself for a while, but I do not know where to go or what to do." "You could stay," Sam said, then seemed surprised by his own words. "At my place, I mean. It is not much, just a cabin on a piece of land I am trying to build into something. But it is remote, and Marcus would have a hard time finding it. You could stay until you figure things out. I could not impose on you like that. It would not be an imposition. Honestly, I could use the help. I am trying to build up a horse breeding operation, and there is more work than one person can handle. You could earn your keep, and it would give you time to decide what you want to do next." Natalie studied his face in the firelight, looking for any sign of ulterior motive, any hint of the kind of manipulation Marcus had shown. But all she saw was honest kindness, maybe even loneliness that matched her own. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Really? You say it is because of your mother, but there has to be more to it than that." Sam was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "My mother ran from my father when I was 10, he said finally. "She took me and my younger sister and fled in the middle of the night, just like you fled today. We made it 2 towns over before he caught up with us. He beat her so badly she could not walk for a week. When she healed enough to run again, she did, but this time she left us behind because she thought we would be safer with him than on the run with her. She was wrong." His voice had gone flat, emotionless in the way of someone recounting trauma too painful for feeling. "He turned mean after she left, meaner than he had been before. Took his anger out on me mostly, but on my sister too when I was not around to take the beating for her. When I was 16, I got big enough to fight back. I hit him so hard I thought I had killed him, and I ran. Left my sister there because I was too scared and stupid to take her with me." "What happened to her?" Natalie whispered. "She married at 17 to get away from him." "Married a good man, thank God. Lives in California now with 3 children and a husband who treats her like she deserves. I visit when I can, send money when I have it. She forgave me for leaving her, though I have never quite forgiven myself. And your mother, dead. She died alone in a rooming house in Nevada 5 years ago. I did not find out until 3 months after it happened. They said it was her heart, but I think it was just being broken too many times by too many men who did not know how to love anything properly. He looked up at Natalie, his eyes reflecting the firelight. So when I see a woman running with nothing but hope, I help, because maybe if someone had helped her, really helped her, she would still be alive. Natalie felt tears slide down her cheeks, unable to stop them this time. I am so sorry. Do not be sorry, just accept the help. Let me do for you what no one did for her. Let me help you get somewhere safe where you can start over, where men like Marcus Hutchinson cannot touch you. All right, Natalie said softly. All right. I will stay at your place until I can figure out what comes next. And thank you, Sam, truly. He nodded, then stood and moved to his saddle, pulling off a bedroll. You take this. I will sleep closer to the fire. I cannot take your bed. You can and you will. You have been through enough today without sleeping on the hard ground. His tone brooked no argument, so Natalie accepted the bedroll and spread it out on a relatively flat spot near the canyon wall. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was slow to come. She lay staring up at the stars, listening to the sound of the spring and the occasional stamp of Sam's horse, processing everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, she had been in Rawhide, trapped and terrified. Now she was free, sleeping under the stars with a stranger who had risked everything to help her. It seemed impossible, like something from a dime novel rather than real life. Sam, she called softly into the darkness. Yeah, how did your mother die exactly? You said her heart, but what really happened? There was a long pause. She gave up, Sam said finally. She ran for so long, was afraid for so long that eventually she just gave up. Stopped eating, stopped caring, stopped wanting to live. By the time I found out where she was and went looking for her, it was too late. I will not give up, Natalie said fiercely. I promise you that. I will not let Marcus or anyone else break me like that. I know you will not, Sam said, and there was something like pride in his voice. I could tell that the moment I saw you. You have fight in you. Do not ever lose that. Natalie finally drifted off to sleep with those words in her ears, feeling safer than she had in months. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Sam moving quietly around the camp. The sun was just beginning to lighten the eastern sky, turning it pale gold and pink. Sam had already packed up most of their supplies and was now preparing a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush cooked over the fire. Morning, he said when he noticed she was awake. We need to get moving soon. I want to cover as much ground as possible before the day gets too hot. They ate quickly. Then Sam helped Natalie back onto the horse. Her legs were sore from yesterday's long ride, and her ribs still ached, but she gritted her teeth and said nothing. If Sam could face whatever came their way with steady determination, so could she. The second day of travel was harder than the first. The terrain grew steeper as they climbed into the mountains, the trail rocky and treacherous in places. Sam dismounted several times to lead the horse through particularly difficult sections, and Natalie used those breaks to stretch her aching muscles and marvel at the changing landscape. They were in the high country now, where ponderosa pines grew tall and straight, their bark smelling of vanilla in the warm sun. Jays called from the branches, and once Natalie saw a small herd of elk moving through the trees below them. The air was cooler here, cleaner somehow, and she found herself breathing deeply for the first time since leaving Rawhide. Not much farther, Sam said as they crested a ridge in the late afternoon. My place is in the valley below, tucked against the mountain. You cannot see it from here, which is part of why I like it. If you cannot see it, you cannot find it unless you know exactly where you are going. They descended into the valley as the sun began to set, and Natalie caught her first glimpse of what Sam called home. It was indeed small, a rough-hewn cabin with a stone chimney and a covered porch that faced south. Behind it was a sturdy-looking barn and a series of corrals, some empty and some containing horses. A creek ran along the eastern edge of the property, lined with cottonwoods that were bright green against the darker pines. "It is not much," Sam said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice, "but it is mine. Well, mine and the bank's. I have been making payments for 2 years now, and in another 3 it will be paid off completely." "It is wonderful," Natalie said honestly. "It is perfect." Sam's face relaxed into something that was almost a smile. "The cabin is rough. I built it myself, and I am better with horses than I am with carpentry. But it is solid, and it keeps out the rain and snow. You can have the bedroom. I will sleep in the loft." "Sam, I cannot take your bedroom." "Yes, you can. A woman needs privacy more than a man does, and that room has a door that latches. The loft is just an open space above the main room. You will be more comfortable in the bedroom." Before Natalie could argue further, Sam dismounted and helped her down. Her legs wobbled when she tried to stand, and she would have fallen if Sam had not caught her elbow. "Steady," he said. "You are not used to riding that long. The soreness will pass in a day or 2. He led her inside while the horse waited patiently in the yard. The cabin was indeed rough but clean, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall, a simple kitchen area with a wood stove and a few shelves, and a handmade table with 2 chairs. Stairs led up to the loft Sam had mentioned, and a door on the far wall presumably opened into the bedroom. "Let me show you," Sam said, crossing to open that door. The bedroom was small but pleasant, with a real bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. The quilt on the bed was well worn but neatly made, and Natalie felt her throat tighten at the thought of Sam giving up his own room for her. "I will bring in some fresh water and get a fire going," Sam said. "You should rest. We will figure everything else out tomorrow. I should help you." "You should rest," Sam repeated firmly. "You have been through hell and back, and your body needs time to recover. There will be plenty of work to do later, I promise." Too exhausted to argue, Natalie sank down onto the bed. Through the window, she could see Sam leading his horse to the barn, his movements efficient and practiced. She watched until he disappeared inside, then lay back on the bed, intending to close her eyes for just a moment. She woke to darkness and the sound of a gentle rain on the roof. Someone had covered her with a blanket, had removed her dusty boots and set them neatly by the door. Through the bedroom wall, she could hear the crackle of a fire and smell something cooking, something that made her stomach growl with sudden fierce hunger. Natalie stood, smoothing her wrinkled dress, and opened the bedroom door. Sam was at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. He had changed clothes and washed up, his dark hair still damp, and he looked younger somehow, less weathered. "I was beginning to think you would sleep straight through till morning," he said without turning around. "I made stew. It is just venison and vegetables, but it is hot and filling." They ate at the small table, and Natalie thought she had never tasted anything better. The stew was rich and savory, the meat tender from long cooking, and she found herself eating 2 helpings while Sam watched with quiet satisfaction. "It has been a while since I cooked for anyone but myself," he admitted. "It is nice to see someone actually enjoying the food." "Where did you learn to cook?" "My mother, before things got bad. She was a good cook when she had the ingredients and the peace of mind to do it. After she left, I taught myself. Trail cooking mostly, but it keeps body and soul together." After dinner, Sam heated water for washing, then discreetly retreated to the barn to finish his evening chores while Natalie cleaned up at the sink. The simple domesticity of it felt strange and wonderful after so many weeks of fear and chaos. She washed her face and hands, brushed out her hair as best she could, and changed into the one other dress she had stuffed into the satchel before fleeing. When Sam returned, shaking rain from his hat, he found her sitting by the fire, combing through her long brown hair. He stopped in the doorway and something flickered in his expression before he looked away. "I brought more wood in," he said, stacking logs near the fireplace. "The rain should clear by morning, but it might get chilly tonight. I will keep the fire going. You do not have to do that. I can tend the fire. I know I do not have to, but I am used to it, and you should sleep properly after the day we have had." Natalie set down her comb and looked at him seriously. "Sam, you have done so much for me already. I do not want to be a burden." "You are not a burden." He straightened up, meeting her eyes. "You are a guest in my home, and where I come from, you treat guests with respect and care. Besides, we have already established that you will work to earn your keep once you are rested. But tonight you rest. Tomorrow we will figure out the details." The next few days fell into a rhythm that felt both strange and natural. Sam rose early each morning to tend his horses, feeding them and checking them over with careful attention. Natalie woke to find coffee already made and breakfast preparations underway, and she insisted on taking over the cooking duties despite Sam's protests. "You said I would work to earn my keep," she reminded him. "Cooking is work." "Fair enough," Sam conceded. "But only if you let me teach you about the horses. I could use someone who can handle them when I need to be elsewhere." So Natalie's education began. She learned the names of Sam's horses, learned to recognize their individual personalities and quirks. There was Jasper, the big bay gelding who had carried them from Rawhide, steady and reliable. There was Rosie, a pretty sorrel mare with a white blaze who was gentle but clever. There was Thunder, a gray stallion who was Sam's pride and joy, the foundation of his hoped-for breeding program. "He has good lines," Sam explained, running his hands over the stallion's muscular neck. "His sire was a cavalry horse, strong and smart. His dam was a Mustang mare, tough as nails. Put those two together and you get a horse that can work all day, every day, and still have heart left over. That is what I want to breed, horses that ranchers and the army will pay good money for." "It is a good plan," Natalie said, meaning it. Sam glanced at her, surprised. "You think so?" "I do. You know horses, that is obvious, and you have the land and the determination to make it work. Give it time, and I think you will succeed." Something warmed in Sam's expression, a pleasure at being believed in that suggested he did not experience it often. "Well, we will see. Still a long way to go, a lot that could go wrong, but I appreciate the vote of confidence." As the days passed, Natalie felt herself beginning to relax, beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, Marcus would not find her here. The cabin was remote, accessible only by a narrow trail that was easy to miss if you did not know where to look. Sam was careful to cover their tracks when he rode out for supplies, and he never mentioned Natalie's presence to anyone he met. "As far as the world knows," he said, "I am still a bachelor living alone on my mountain. Better to keep it that way for now." Natalie agreed, though there was something about the lie that made her uncomfortable. Not because she wanted people to know where she was, but because being hidden away like a secret felt wrong somehow, as if she should be ashamed of her presence here. But she pushed the feeling aside, reminding herself that safety was more important than pride. In the evenings, after the work was done and dinner was eaten, she and Sam would sit by the fire and talk. They spoke of small things at first, safe topics like the weather and the horses and Sam's plans for expanding his corrals. But gradually, Tentatively, they began to share more. Sam told her about growing up with violence, about learning to be small and quiet to avoid his father's attention. He told her about the guilt he carried for leaving his sister behind, even though she assured him in her letters that she understood, that she had forgiven him long ago. He told her about the years he spent drifting from ranch to ranch, working hard but never settling, always moving on before anyone could get too close. "I bought this place 2 years ago because I was tired of running," he admitted one night. Tired of always being on the outside looking in, tired of having no roots, no home. "I wanted something that was mine, something I could build with my own hands. It gets lonely sometimes, but it is better than feeling like I do not belong anywhere." "I understand that," Natalie said softly. "I felt that way in Rawhide, even before I discovered the truth about Marcus. I was always an outsider, always the seamstress who came from Tucson, never quite part of the town. When Marcus started courting me, I thought that would change. I thought I would finally have a place, a person who wanted me there. Finding out it was all a lie was devastating, but in some ways, it was not a surprise. I have felt unwanted for so long that I almost expected it." "You are wanted," Sam said, and there was an intensity in his voice that made Natalie look up sharply. "Here, I mean. You are wanted here. You belong here as much as I do, maybe more. You make this place feel like a home instead of just somewhere I sleep." Their eyes met across the firelight and something passed between them, something warm and fragile and terrifying. Natalie felt her breath catch, felt her heart begin to race, and she saw her own feelings reflected in Sam's face. Then Sam looked away, clearing his throat. "Anyway, what I am trying to say is that you should not feel like you have to leave just because some arbitrary amount of time has passed. Stay as long as you need to or want to. There is room here for both of us." "Thank you," Natalie whispered, her voice unsteady. That night, lying in bed with the sound of rain on the roof and the distant crackle of the fire, Natalie admitted to herself what she had been trying to ignore for days. She was falling in love with Samuel Wright. She was falling in love with his quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness, his fierce determination to be better than the violence he had grown up with. She was falling in love with the way he cared for his horses, the way he looked at the mountains, the way he smiled when he thought no one was watching. It was too soon, far too soon. She had just escaped one man's control. She should not be thinking about falling into any kind of relationship with another. But her heart did not seem to care about logic or timing. Her heart only cared that Sam made her feel safe, made her feel valued, made her feel like maybe she deserved good things after all. 2 weeks after arriving at Sam's cabin, Natalie was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her heart leaped into her throat, and she dropped the shirt she had been pinning, her eyes flying to the trail that led down into the valley. Sam emerged from the barn, moving to stand between the cabin and whoever was approaching. His hand rested on his gun, not drawing it but ready, and Natalie saw the tension in his shoulders. A rider appeared at the top of the trail, a man on a dark horse. For one terrible moment, Natalie thought it was Marcus, thought he had found her after all. Then the rider came closer, and she realized it was a stranger, an older man with a sheriff's badge pinned to his vest. "Can I help you, Sheriff?" Sam called out, his voice carefully neutral. "Looking for a woman," the sheriff said, reining in his horse a respectful distance away. "Name of Natalie Kemp. She is wanted for theft in Rawhide. You seen anyone matching her description?" "What does she look like?" Sam asked. "Brown hair, green eyes, early 20s. Pretty girl on the slender side. Stole $3,000 from Marcus Hutchinson about 2 weeks back. He is offering a reward for information leading to her capture." Natalie's hands clenched in the wet fabric of the shirt she still held. This was it. This was where everything fell apart, but Sam did not even glance in her direction. "Have not seen anyone like that," he said easily. "I am up here alone most of the time. Do not get many visitors." The sheriff looked around the property, his eyes sharp and assessing. Natalie knew he could see the laundry line, could see the women's clothing hanging there. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. "That is a lot of laundry for a man living alone," the sheriff observed. "My sister came to visit last week," Sam said without missing a beat. "She just left yesterday morning heading back to California. You might have passed her on the road south." "Might have," the sheriff said slowly. His eyes lingered on Natalie, who had turned her back and was pretending to focus on the laundry, her hair covered by a bonnet that shadowed her face. "Your sister, you say?" "That is right. She comes every few months to check on me, make sure I am not living like a complete heathen." Sam's voice was light, almost amused. "Women worry about things like that." The sheriff sat his horse for a moment longer, clearly debating whether to push the issue. Then he touched his hat brim. "Well, if you do see this Natalie Kemp, you let someone know. Marcus Hutchinson is mighty eager to get his property back." "She is not his property," Sam said, and there was steel in his voice now. "If a woman takes money that is owed to her and runs from a man who means her harm, that is not theft. That is survival." The sheriff's expression hardened. "You sound mighty sympathetic to a woman you claim you have never met." "I am sympathetic to anyone running from Marcus Hutchinson. I have heard enough about him to know what kind of man he is. If this Natalie Kemp is smart, she will keep running and never look back." "That is a dangerous opinion to voice, Mr. Wright. It is the truth, and last I checked, telling the truth was not a crime." The two men stared at each other for a long moment, and Natalie held her breath, waiting for the confrontation to turn violent. Then the sheriff shook his head. "I will be on my way, but I will be back this way in a few weeks. If I find out you have been lying to me, there will be consequences." "There is nothing for you to find," Sam said. "Safe travels, Sheriff." The sheriff wheeled his horse and rode back up the trail, disappearing into the trees. Sam did not move until the sound of hoofbeats had faded completely. Then his shoulders sagged slightly, and he turned to look at Natalie. "You all right?" he asked. Natalie nodded, though her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the laundry. "You lied for me." "You could get in trouble for that." "I told him the truth where it mattered. You are not Marcus Hutchinson's property, and you had every right to take that money. The law might see it differently, but I do not." He crossed to her, taking the laundry from her trembling hands and hanging it himself. "We need to be more careful, though. The sheriff might have believed the sister's story, or he might not. Either way, Marcus knows to look in this direction now." "Maybe I should leave," Natalie said, though the words hurt to speak. "Maybe it would be safer for both of us if I just kept moving." "No." Sam's voice was sharp, almost angry. "No more running. That sheriff had no legal standing to search my property or question me without a warrant. Marcus Hutchinson might be rich and powerful, but even he has to follow the law, more or less. We will be careful, we will be smart, but you are not running again. You can stop running now." Those words, "you can stop running now," hit Natalie like a physical blow. She realized suddenly that part of her had been waiting, had been expecting Sam to turn her out, to decide she was too much trouble to send her away. But here he was, risking his own safety, his own freedom to keep her protected. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this for me?" Sam looked at her for a long moment, his gray eyes serious. "Because you deserve to be safe. Because you deserve to have a home and a life without fear. And because—" He trailed off, looking away. "Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about my mother and started being about you." "About us?" Natalie's heart stuttered in her chest. "Sam." "I know it is too soon," he said quickly. "I know you have been through hell and the last thing you need is some man making declarations, but I need you to know that I care about you, Natalie. I care about you more than I have cared about anyone in a very long time. You staying here, it is not charity. It is not about paying some debt to the past. It is about wanting you here because you make everything better." Tears spilled down Natalie's cheeks, but for once they were not tears of fear or grief. They were tears of relief, of hope, of something that felt dangerously close to joy. "I care about you too," she admitted. "I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it is too soon, that I should not trust anyone after Marcus. But I do trust you, Sam. I trust you more than I have trusted anyone." Sam reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away and gently wipe the tears from her cheeks with his thumb. His touch was warm and careful, and Natalie found herself leaning into it. "We will figure this out," he said softly. "All of it. Marcus, the law, whatever comes next, but we will do it together. You are not alone anymore, and neither am I." Natalie nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Sam pulled her into a hug, his arms strong and steady around her, and she buried her face in his chest and let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being somewhere safe with someone who genuinely cared. The days that followed were tense as they waited to see if the sheriff would return, if Marcus would send more men. Sam became more cautious, riding out to neighboring ranches to ask discreet questions about strangers in the area. He came back with news both good and bad. "The good news is that the sheriff did not seem to pursue the matter much beyond visiting me," Sam reported one evening. "The bad news is that Marcus Hutchinson is not giving up. He has hired men to search for you, offering a substantial reward. They are checking all the towns between Rawhide and Prescott. So it is only a matter of time before they come here," Natalie said, her stomach sinking. "Maybe. Or maybe they will give up eventually. The territory is vast, and you are just one woman. If Marcus does not find you within a few weeks, he might decide you are not worth the continued expense." "You do not believe that?" "No," Sam admitted. "I do not. Marcus Hutchinson strikes me as the kind of man who does not let go of things easily, but that does not mean we are without options." "What options?" Sam leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "We could leave, both of us. Head to California or Colorado, somewhere Marcus's reach does not extend. I could sell this place, take the money, and we could start fresh somewhere new." "You love this place," Natalie protested. "You have worked so hard to build it. I cannot ask you to give that up." "You are not asking. I am offering. And yes, I love this place, but I would give it up in a heartbeat if it meant keeping you safe." Natalie felt her throat tighten again, overwhelmed by his willingness to sacrifice for her. "What about another option? One where we do not have to run and you do not have to give up your home?" "I am listening." "What if we got married?" Sam blinked, clearly surprised. "Married? Think about it. If I am your wife, I am not Natalie Kemp anymore. I am Natalie Wright. Marcus is looking for a single woman fleeing alone. He is not looking for a married woman living on a remote ranch with her husband. It would give me legal protection, and it would make it harder for anyone to question my presence here." Sam was quiet for a long moment, and Natalie felt panic rising. Maybe she had overstepped, maybe she had misread the situation, maybe he did not care for her as much as he had said. "It is a good plan," Sam said finally. "A smart plan. But Natalie, marriage is not something to enter into lightly, especially not as a strategy." "Are you sure that is what you want?" "I want to be safe," Natalie said honestly. "But I also want to be here with you. The past few weeks have been the happiest I have been in years, maybe ever. You make me feel like I matter, like I am worth something beyond what I can do for someone else. If we are going to be together anyway, if we both want that, Then why not make it official? Because you deserve a real proposal, Sam said, and there was something tender in his voice. You deserve romance and flowers and all the things a woman should have when a man asks her to spend her life with him. You do not deserve a marriage of convenience born out of desperation. Sam, after everything I have been through, the most romantic thing in the world is a man who cares about me being happy. You have already given me more than any flowers or pretty words could. If you want to marry me, if you care about me the way I care about you, then asking me is all the romance I need. Sam stood up from his chair and crossed to where Natalie sat. He took her hands in his, holding them gently. Natalie Kemp, I know we have not known each other long. I know we came together under terrible circumstances. But these past weeks have shown me that you are the strongest, kindest, most resilient woman I have ever met. You make me want to be better, to build something lasting, to have a future that is more than just survival. So yes, I want to marry you. Not just to keep you safe, though that is important, but because I am falling in love with you and I cannot imagine my life without you in it now. Will you marry me? Yes, Natalie said, tears streaming down her face again. Yes, I will marry you. Sam pulled her to her feet and into his arms, holding her close. Then, slowly, carefully, he tilted her face up and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, full of promise and hope, and Natalie felt something inside her that had been frozen for years finally begin to thaw. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. When? Sam asked. When do you want to do this? As soon as possible, Natalie said. The sooner we are married, the sooner I have legal protection. There is a circuit preacher who comes through Prescott once a month. I can ride into town tomorrow, find out when he will be there next, arrange everything. What if someone in town recognizes me? What if word gets back to Marcus? We will be careful. I will tell the preacher you are my fiancé from back east who just arrived. No one in Prescott has seen you before, so there is no reason for anyone to connect you to the woman Marcus is looking for. We will keep it quiet, just the two of us and whoever needs to be there to make it legal. They spent the rest of the evening planning, working out the details of their new story. Natalie would become Natalie Wright, a woman Sam had been courting through letters for the past year. She had come west to marry him, arriving just a few weeks ago. It was simple, believable, and just true enough in spirit if not in fact. The next morning, Sam rode into Prescott while Natalie stayed at the cabin, too nervous to do much beyond pace and try to keep busy. He returned in the late afternoon with good news. The preacher will be in Prescott 3 days from now. I told him we wanted a quiet ceremony, just the two of us and whatever witnesses he could provide. He agreed, no questions asked. Apparently, he marries a lot of couples under similar circumstances, people who want to avoid fuss or have reasons for privacy. 3 days, Natalie breathed. In 3 days I will be your wife. And you will be safe, Sam said, or at least safer. Marcus will have a much harder time making a claim on a married woman, especially one married to a man who owns property and has standing in the community. The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Natalie washed and mended her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had survived the flight from Rawhide relatively intact. Sam cleaned himself up, trimming his beard and pressing his one good shirt. Neither of them had much in the way of finery, but it did not matter. This marriage was about protection and survival, yes, but it was also about something real that had grown between them. On the morning of the wedding, they rode to Prescott together. Natalie once again seated behind Sam on Jasper. The town was small but growing, with new buildings going up on the outskirts and the constant sound of hammers and saws filling the air. Sam guided them to a small church on the edge of town, where the circuit preacher waited with his wife and another man to serve as witnesses. The ceremony was brief and simple, the words familiar but no less powerful for their simplicity. Sam's voice was steady as he made his vows, his eyes never leaving Natalie's face. Natalie found herself crying again, but these were happy tears, joyful tears, tears for everything they had survived and everything they were building together. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher said, smiling. "You may kiss your bride." Sam cupped Natalie's face in his hands and kissed her sweetly while the small congregation clapped. When they pulled apart, Natalie saw that Sam's eyes were bright with emotion too. "Hello, Mrs. Wright," he said softly. "Hello, Mr. Wright," she replied, and they both laughed, giddy with relief and happiness. They signed the marriage certificate, paid the preacher, and were back on the trail within an hour. Sam wanted to minimize their time in town, wanted to reduce any chance of someone recognizing Natalie or asking too many questions. But as they rode back toward the cabin, now their cabin, Natalie felt lighter than she had in months. "We did it," she said, her arms around Sam's waist. "We are actually married." "We are," Sam agreed. "You are safe now, Natalie. Legally safe. Whatever Marcus tries, he cannot claim you anymore. You are mine now, and I am yours, and that is all that matters." The word "mine" should have frightened Natalie after everything she had been through with Marcus. But coming from Sam, it did not sound like possession. It sounded like partnership, like belonging, like home. Their wedding night was gentle and careful, Sam constantly checking that Natalie was comfortable, that she was happy, that she wanted everything that happened between them. It was nothing like the crude expectations Marcus had expressed, nothing like the degrading transactions she had witnessed in Rawhide. It was tender and slow, full of whispered words and soft touches, and Natalie felt the last of her fear finally dissolve in the warmth of Sam's arms. Afterwards, lying tangled together in the bed they now shared, Natalie traced the scars on Sam's shoulder, evidence of his father's cruelty. "I am going to make you happy," she promised. "Every day for the rest of our lives, I am going to make sure you know you are loved and valued and wanted." "You already do," Sam said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Just by being here, by choosing me, you make me happier than I knew I could be." The weeks that followed their wedding fell into a comfortable rhythm. They worked together during the day, Sam teaching Natalie more about horses while she managed the household and turned the rough cabin into something that felt like a real home. She planted a small garden near the creek, growing vegetables and herbs that improved their meals immensely. She sewed curtains for the windows and made cushions for the chairs, small touches that softened the rough edges of their frontier life. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, Sam's arm around Natalie's shoulders, Natalie's head resting against his chest. They talked about their dreams for the future, about expanding the horse breeding operation, about maybe having children someday when things were more settled and secure. "I think you would be a wonderful father," Natalie said one night. Sam looked down at her, surprised. "You think so?" "I know so. You are kind and patient, and you know how to care for things. Those are the qualities that matter, not some perfect childhood or flawless example. You would raise children who feel safe and loved, and that is everything." "I would want that," Sam admitted. "A family, I mean." "Not right away, but someday. Children who grow up knowing they are wanted, who never have to be afraid of their father's anger or their mother's tears." "Then that is what we will have," Natalie said firmly. "When the time is right, we will have that." 2 months after their wedding, a rider appeared on the trail to the cabin. This time, it was not the sheriff but a man Natalie did not recognize, though Sam clearly did. He went tense beside her, his hand moving instinctively toward his gun. Stay inside, he told Natalie quietly. Lock the door and do not come out unless I call for you. Natalie wanted to argue but saw the seriousness in Sam's face and obeyed. She retreated into the cabin and barred the door, then moved to the window where she could watch what happened. The rider was a rough-looking man, unshaven and trail-worn, with cold eyes that Natalie recognized from her time in Rawhide. He was one of Marcus's men, one of the enforcers who made sure Marcus's business ran smoothly. "Can I help you?" Sam called out, standing in the yard with his hand near his gun. "Looking for Samuel Wright," the man said. "That is me. Name is Jake Daniels. I work for Marcus Hutchinson. He sent me to ask you some questions about a woman named Natalie Kemp." "Already talked to the sheriff about that," Sam said evenly. "Told him I have not seen anyone by that name." "Yeah, well, Mr. Hutchinson is not satisfied with the sheriff's investigation. He wants his own people looking into things. So I am going to ask you again, have you seen Natalie Kemp?" "No. Like I told the sheriff, I live up here alone except when my sister visits from California." Jake Daniels smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "That is interesting, because I just came from California. Spent 2 weeks checking train records and stage lines, talking to anyone who might have seen a woman matching Natalie Kemp's description." "You know what I found?" "I do not particularly care," Sam said. "I found nothing. No record of any woman traveling west from Arizona to California around the time Miss Kemp disappeared, which makes me wonder if this sister of yours really exists. What my sister does, and where she goes, is none of your business. It is Mr. Hutchinson's business. He is missing $3,000 and a woman who belongs to him. He wants both back." "She does not belong to him," Sam said, and there was steel in his voice. "Women are not property, no matter what Marcus Hutchinson thinks." Jake Daniels's smile faded. "You are protecting her." "She is here, is not she? There is no woman here except my wife, and she is none of your concern." "Your wife?" Jake's eyes narrowed. "That is convenient. When did this wedding happen?" 2 months ago. We married in Prescott. Everything is legal and recorded. My wife is Natalie Wright, born in New York, came west to marry me. If you do not believe me, you can check the records yourself." Jake sat his horse, clearly trying to decide how to proceed. "I will need to see this wife of yours." "No. No. You have no legal authority to demand anything from me. This is my property and you are trespassing. I have answered your questions politely, but I am done being polite. You can leave now, or I can remove you. Your choice." Jake's hand moved toward his gun, and Natalie's heart stopped. But before he could draw, Sam's gun was already out and pointed at him. "Do not," Sam said softly. "I am faster than you, and I have legal right to defend my property. Do not make this into something that will end badly for you." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Jake slowly raised his hands away from his gun. "Mr. Hutchinson is not going to let this go," he said. "He will keep looking, keep asking questions. Eventually, he will find out the truth. The truth is that I am a married man living on my own land with my legal wife. There is nothing for Marcus Hutchinson to find because there is nothing here that concerns him. Now get off my property." Jake wheeled his horse and rode back up the trail, and Sam stood watching until he disappeared completely. Only then did he lower his gun and turn toward the cabin. "You can come out now," he called. Natalie opened the door with shaking hands. "He knows. He might not be able to prove it, but he knows." "Maybe," Sam said, pulling her into his arms. "But knowing and proving are two different things. We are legally married, Natalie. You are legally my wife. Even if Marcus figures out that you were Natalie Kemp before you became Natalie Wright, he cannot touch you now. You are under my protection, and the law recognizes that. But he could hurt you. He could send more men, could make trouble for you. Let him try." I am not afraid of Marcus Hutchinson." But Natalie was afraid that Sam would pay the price for protecting her, afraid that Marcus's reach was longer than they had anticipated. That night, she lay awake long after Sam had fallen asleep, listening to the night sounds outside and wondering if every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves was another of Marcus's men coming to destroy the fragile happiness she had found. The next few weeks were tense, both of them constantly alert for any sign of trouble. Sam took to carrying his rifle whenever he worked outside, and he taught Natalie to shoot, making her practice until she could hit a target consistently. "I hope you never need to use this," he said. "But if someone comes when I am not here, I want you to be able to defend yourself. I do not want to shoot anyone, neither do I, but wanting and needing are different things. Promise me you will protect yourself if you have to." Natalie promised, though she prayed it would never come to that. 3 months after the confrontation with Jake Daniels, a different kind of visitor appeared at their cabin. This time, it was a woman, middle-aged and respectable-looking, driving a small wagon. Sam and Natalie watched her approach with cautious curiosity. "Mrs. Wright." The woman called out as she climbed down from the wagon. "I am Clara Simmons. I run the Church Ladies' Auxiliary in Prescott. I heard you got married a few months back, and we wanted to welcome you properly to the community." Natalie glanced at Sam, who looked as surprised as she felt. This was not what they had expected. "That is very kind of you," Natalie said, moving forward to greet the woman. "Please come inside. I will make some tea." Clara Simmons proved to be a wealth of information about Prescott and the surrounding area. She talked about the other ranching families, about the growth of the town, about the various church and social activities that Natalie and Sam were welcome to join. "We do not get many new families up this way," Clara said cheerfully. "Most people settle closer to town. But the preacher told us about your wedding, and we wanted to make sure you felt welcomed. It can be lonely out here, especially for a woman." "I am not lonely," Natalie said honestly. "Sam is wonderful company, and there is plenty to keep me busy. Still, you should come to the church social next month. It would be good for you to meet some of the other women, make some friends. And your husband could meet some of the ranchers, maybe find opportunities for selling those horses he is breeding." Natalie had not considered this aspect of being legitimately married, the way it would integrate them into the community, give them connections and support beyond just the two of them. It was both exciting and terrifying. After Clara left, laden with a jar of Natalie's preserves and promises to see them at the social, Sam pulled Natalie close. "Are you all right with this?" he asked. "With becoming part of the community? I know we have been keeping to ourselves for safety reasons, but maybe that is not the best strategy anymore. Maybe being visible, being established, would actually provide more protection." "I think you are right," Natalie said. "If we are just Sam and Natalie, Wright, respectable married couple living on a mountain ranch, then there is no reason for anyone to look deeper. We become ordinary, and ordinary is safe." So they began to integrate themselves into the community around Prescott. They attended the church social, where Natalie met other ranchers' wives and Sam made connections that would help him sell his horses. They went to town more regularly for supplies, stopping to chat with neighbors, becoming familiar faces rather than mysterious recluses. And slowly, carefully, Natalie began to believe that maybe she really was safe. Maybe Marcus had given up, decided she was not worth the continued effort. Maybe the marriage had protected her after all. 4 months after their wedding, as autumn began to paint the mountains in shades of gold and red, Natalie realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not said anything to Sam, wanting to be certain before she shared the news. Now, Watching him work with the horses, seeing the gentle way he handled even the most skittish animals, she knew she could not wait any longer. "Sam," she called from the porch, "can you come here for a moment?" He finished what he was doing and crossed the yard to her, concerned. "Everything all right?" "Everything is wonderful," Natalie said, taking his hands. "I have something to tell you. We are going to have a baby." Sam's expression went through a series of rapid changes, shock giving way to joy, giving way to fierce protectiveness. "A baby, are you sure?" "I am sure. Due sometime in the spring, I think. Late April or early May." Sam pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "A baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Natalie asked, though she could see the answer on his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Sam said. "I am terrified and excited and overwhelmed and so happy. We are going to have a family, Natalie. A real family." That night, they lay in bed talking about the future, about names and nurseries and all the things their child would need. Sam's hand rested on Natalie's still flat stomach, his touch reverent. "I am going to be the best father I can be," he vowed. "This child will grow up knowing they are loved and wanted. They will never have to be afraid, never have to wonder if they matter. I promise you that." "I know," Natalie said softly. "I have always known. You are going to be an amazing father." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and into winter. Natalie continued working around the ranch, though Sam insisted she take things easier as she grew bigger. The baby was active, kicking strongly, and Sam would spend hours with his hand on Natalie's belly, marveling at the life they had created together. They had just finished celebrating Christmas, a simple but joyful affair with a small pine tree Sam had cut and brought inside when another visitor appeared. This time, it was the sheriff who had come looking for Natalie months before. "Sheriff," Sam said, greeting him at the door. "What brings you out here in the middle of winter?" "Got some news I thought you should hear," the sheriff said, looking uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" Sam stepped aside and the sheriff entered, removing his hat and nodding respectfully to Natalie where she sat by the fire, her pregnancy now obvious. "Mrs. Wright," he said, "congratulations on your condition." "Thank you," Natalie said warily. The sheriff turned back to Sam. "Marcus Hutchinson is dead, shot 3 days ago in a dispute over a card game in Tombstone. Seems he had been drinking and accused another player of cheating. The other man drew faster." Natalie felt the room spin, and Sam was instantly at her side, helping her stay upright. "Dead," she whispered. "Marcus is really dead?" "Yes, madam. I thought you might want to know, given that he was the one who accused you of theft." The sheriff paused, then added, "For what it is worth, after Hutchinson died, his records were examined by the territorial marshal. Turns out he was running quite the operation, trafficking women and other illegal activities. The woman he claimed stole from him, this Natalie Kemp. Well, the general consensus is that if she did take money from him, she was probably owed it and then some. Case is closed and no one is looking for her anymore." Sam's arm tightened around Natalie's shoulders. "That is good to know, Sheriff. Thank you for coming all this way to tell us. Seemed like the right thing to do." The sheriff put his hat back on. "You folks have a good rest of the winter. And Mrs. Wright, I hope the baby comes healthy and strong." After the sheriff left, Natalie and Sam stood together in the silence, processing what they had just learned. "He is really gone," Natalie said finally. "Marcus is dead and no one is looking for me anymore." "You were already safe," Sam reminded her. "You were already protected. But yes, this makes it official. You never have to be afraid of him again." Natalie turned to Sam, tears streaming down her face. "We are free. Completely, truly free. We can stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, stop looking over our shoulders. We can just be happy." "We already were happy," Sam said, wiping away her tears. "But yes, now we can be happy without that shadow hanging over us. Now we can just focus on our future, on our family, on building the life we want." That night, Natalie slept more soundly than she had in months, years even. The nightmares that had plagued her since fleeing Rawhide finally faded, replaced by dreams of the future, of the child growing inside her, of the life she and Sam were creating together. The winter passed slowly, with heavy snows that sometimes kept them isolated for days at a time. But Natalie did not mind. The cabin was warm and cozy, Sam was attentive and loving, and she felt the baby growing stronger every day. They spent the long winter evenings planning for the spring, for the baby's arrival, for the expansion of the ranch that Sam wanted to undertake once the weather improved. In late March, as the snow began to melt and the first flowers pushed through the cold ground, Natalie went into labor. Sam had arranged for Clara Simmons to come stay with them for a few weeks around the due date, and the older woman proved invaluable, coaching Natalie through the pain and helping Sam stay calm. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. But finally, as the sun was setting on the second evening, Natalie delivered a healthy baby boy with strong lungs and a full head of dark hair. "He looks like you," Natalie said tiredly, watching Sam hold their son with trembling hands. "He is perfect," Sam breathed, his eyes shining with tears. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas, after Sam's grandfather, who had been the only kind man in his father's family. Thomas Samuel Wright, born in the spring of 1879 in a small cabin in the Arizona mountains, welcomed into a world of love and safety his parents had fought so hard to create. The months after Thomas's birth were both exhausting and wonderful. Natalie recovered slowly, and Sam took over more of the household duties while she focused on nursing and caring for the baby. Thomas was a good baby, healthy and happy, and watching Sam with his son made Natalie fall even more deeply in love with her husband. Sam was a natural father, gentle and patient and endlessly fascinated by every little thing Thomas did. He built a cradle with his own hands, carved wooden toys, sang lullabies in a surprisingly pleasant voice. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor at night when Thomas was fussy, and looked at his son with such profound love that it brought tears to Natalie's eyes. As Thomas grew from a tiny newborn into a chubby, smiling baby, Sam's horse breeding business began to flourish. The quality of his horses became known throughout the region, and he started getting orders from ranchers and even from the army. The money was not extravagant, but it was steady, and it allowed them to make improvements to the ranch, to buy better stock, to build a proper barn and expand the corrals. By Thomas's first birthday, they had established themselves as one of the more successful small ranches in the area. They had friends in Prescott, connections throughout the territory, and a reputation for honesty and hard work. No one remembered or cared about Natalie Kemp, the woman who had fled Rawhide with stolen money. There was only Natalie Wright, respected wife and mother, pillar of the small community on the mountain. On a cool evening in May 1880, Sam and Natalie sat on the porch watching Thomas toddle around the yard, chasing butterflies and laughing. Sam's arm was around Natalie's shoulders, her head resting against his chest, and everything felt right with the world. "You ever think about that day?" Sam asked quietly. "The day I found you in Rawhide." "Sometimes," Natalie admitted. "I think about how terrified I was, how certain I was that my life was over. I could not imagine anything good ever happening again. And now I have everything I never knew I wanted. A husband who loves me, a beautiful son, a home that feels safe and warm. Sometimes I cannot believe how much has changed in 2 years. I told you that you could stop running, Sam said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Did you believe me? Not at first, but you proved it to me day by day, moment by moment. You showed me what it meant to be safe, to be loved, to have someone who would protect me without trying to control me. You gave me a life, Sam. A real life, not just survival. You gave me one too, Sam said softly. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You gave me purpose, gave me a reason to build something lasting. You and Thomas, you are everything to me. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Thomas finally exhausted himself and came toddling over to his parents, reaching up to be held. Sam scooped him up, and Thomas immediately laid his head on his father's shoulder, thumb in his mouth, eyelids drooping. "Bath and bed for this one," Natalie said, standing and stretching. "I will heat the water." Inside the cabin, now expanded to include a proper bedroom for Thomas, Natalie prepared her son's bath while Sam changed him out of his dusty clothes. It was a routine they had down to an art, working together seamlessly, each knowing what the other needed without words. After Thomas was clean and dressed for bed, Sam rocked him while Natalie sang a lullaby, one her own mother had sung to her before she died. Thomas's eyes drifted closed, his breathing evening out into sleep, and Sam carefully laid him in his cradle. Later, lying in bed with Sam's arms around her, Natalie found herself thinking about the future again. "Do you want more children?" she asked. "Do you?" "I think so. I like the idea of Thomas having siblings, of a house full of children and noise and love, but only if you want that too." "I want whatever makes you happy," Sam said. "If you want more children, then we will have more children. If Thomas is enough, then Thomas is enough. I am just grateful for what we have." "I want more," Natalie said. "Not right away, but in a year or two. I want Thomas to have a brother or sister, want them to grow up together the way you never got to grow up with your sister." "Then that is what we will do," Sam agreed, pulling her closer. "We will fill this house with children and make sure every single one of them knows they are loved and wanted. We will give them the childhood we did not have." 2 years later, in the spring of 1882, Natalie gave birth to a daughter they named Clara, after Clara Simmons, who had done so much to help them integrate into the community. Clara was a quiet baby with her mother's green eyes and her father's dark hair, and Thomas was immediately smitten with his little sister, wanting to help with everything. "Gentle," Sam would remind his son. "She is very small and delicate. We have to be careful with her." Thomas would nod seriously and pat his sister's head with exaggerated care, making both his parents smile. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Sam's reputation for breeding quality horses spread beyond Arizona territory, and he started getting orders from as far away as Texas and California. They hired help, a young man named Billy who was good with horses and respectful of boundaries. They built a proper house, larger and more comfortable than the original cabin, though they kept the cabin as a guest house and storage. Natalie started a small business of her own, making and selling preserves and baked goods in Prescott. It was not about the money, which was modest, but about having something that was hers, about contributing to their success in her own way. Sam encouraged her wholeheartedly, even building her a proper summer kitchen so she could work without heating up the main house. By 1884, when Thomas was 5 and Clara was 2, they were one of the most successful ranches in the region. They had weathered droughts and harsh winters, had dealt with occasional rustlers and the normal challenges of frontier life, but they had done it together, and their bond had only grown stronger through the difficulties. On their 6th wedding anniversary, Sam surprised Natalie with a gift, a beautiful gold locket that had belonged to his mother. "My sister sent it to me," he explained as he fastened it around Natalie's neck. "Said our mother would have wanted you to have it, would have been grateful to you for making me happy." Natalie opened the locket to find tiny portraits inside, one of Thomas and one of Clara. "When did you do this?" "Last time I was in Prescott. Found an artist who does miniatures. I wanted you to have something that reminded you of everything we have built together." Natalie threw her arms around Sam's neck, kissing him deeply. "I do not need reminders. I carry you and the children in my heart every moment, but this is beautiful, and I will treasure it always." That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Sam and Natalie sat on the porch as they had on so many evenings before. The Arizona sky was full of stars, and the air smelled of pine and sagebrush. "You ever regret it?" Natalie asked. "Helping me that day in Rawhide? Your life would have been simpler if you had just walked away. Simpler, maybe, but emptier, lonelier, less meaningful." Sam turned to look at her, his gray eyes serious in the starlight. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Natalie. You and our children, this life we have built, it is everything I never knew I needed. So no, I do not regret it. Not for a single moment." "I used to have nightmares," Natalie admitted. "About Marcus finding me, about everything falling apart, about losing you and the children. But I have not had one of those nightmares in years. This is real, is not it? We really did build something lasting and good. We did. And we will keep building it, keep making it better, for as long as we both shall live. That is what I promised you when we got married, and I meant every word." As if to prove his point, Thomas appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Papa, I had a bad dream." Sam scooped up his son and settled him in his lap. "Want to tell me about it?" Thomas shook his head, burrowing against his father's chest. "Just stay with me, always," Sam promised. "I will always stay with you." Natalie watched her husband and son together, her hand unconsciously moving to her belly where she suspected another baby was already growing, though she had not yet told Sam. Their family was expanding, their life was rich and full, and the shadows of the past had finally faded completely. 3 years later, in 1887, their family was complete. They had Thomas, now 8 and already showing promise with horses. They had Clara, 5 and smart as a whip, already reading better than most adults. They had baby Matthew, born in the winter of 1885, sunny and cheerful. And they had little Sarah, just 6 months old, with her father's gray eyes and her mother's gentle spirit. The ranch had grown to be one of the largest in the region, with multiple barns, extensive corrals, and a house that could comfortably accommodate their growing family and occasional guests. Sam employed 3 full-time hands now and hired additional help during busy seasons. Natalie's preserve business had grown beyond Prescott, with her products selling in general stores throughout the territory. They had also become leaders in their community. Sam served on the town council, helping make decisions about schools and roads and other civic matters. Natalie was heavily involved in the church, organizing charity drives and helping new families get settled. They were respected, established, secure in a way that seemed impossible when they had first fled Rawhide nearly a decade before. On a warm summer evening in July 1889, 11 years after Natalie had run from Rawhide with nothing but hope, the entire family gathered on the expanded porch for dinner. Thomas was now 10, already helping Sam with the horses and showing signs of becoming a fine horseman himself. Clara at 7 was curious about everything, constantly asking questions and reading every book she could get her hands on. Matthew at 4 was adventurous and fearless, always climbing trees or chasing the ranch dogs. Sarah at 2 was sweet and cuddly, everyone's favorite because of her sunny disposition. As they ate the meal Natalie and the older children had prepared together, Sam looked around the table at his family, his expression one of profound contentment. "You know what today is?" he asked Natalie. "July 15th, she said, confused. 11 years ago today, I walked out of that saloon in Rawhide and found you pressed against the wall, terrified and alone. 11 years ago today, our lives changed forever. You remember the exact date. I remember everything about that day. How you looked, how you sounded, the fear in your eyes, but also the determination. I remember thinking that you were the bravest person I had ever met, that if I could just help you get safe, maybe I could make up for not helping my mother." He reached across the table to take her hand. "I had no idea that helping you would end up saving me too." Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind that came from overwhelming happiness. "You told me I could stop running. I did not believe you at first. But you do now. I stopped running years ago, Sam. I stopped running the moment I realized I was not just safe with you, I was home with you. You gave me everything I thought I had lost when my parents died. You gave me family, security, love, purpose. You gave me a reason to stop being afraid." Thomas, who had been listening to his parents' conversation with interest, piped up. "Is that why we celebrate Rescue Day every year? Because Papa rescued Mama?" "That is part of it," Sam said. "But really, we celebrate because that is the day our family started. Without that day, without your mother's courage and our willingness to help each other, none of you would be here. This whole beautiful life we have would not exist." "I am glad you rescued Mama," Clara said seriously. "Otherwise we would not have our family." "Me too," Matthew added, not entirely sure what they were talking about but wanting to participate. "Me too," Sarah echoed, making everyone laugh. After dinner, while Sam and Thomas tended the horses and Clara read to her younger siblings, Natalie stood on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains that had become so familiar and beloved. She thought about the woman she had been 11 years ago, terrified and desperate, running with nothing but hope. That woman had been so certain her life was over, so convinced that she would never be safe or happy or loved. But that woman had also been braver than she knew, determined enough to run even when running seemed hopeless, strong enough to accept help from a stranger, wise enough to recognize genuine kindness when she saw it. Sam came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about? About how far we have come, about how different everything is from what I thought it would be. Better or worse, so much better, immeasurably better. I thought I was running toward survival, but I ran toward you instead. I ran toward love and family, and everything I had given up hoping for." "I am glad you ran," Sam said softly. "I am glad you had the courage to flee, to take that chance, to trust me even when you had no reason to. Because you are right, you ran toward me, and I have been running toward you my entire life without knowing it. We found each other in Rawhide, two broken people trying to escape our pasts, and we built something whole together." They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, watching their children play in the yard, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the evening. The cattle lowed in the distance, the horses nickered in their corrals, and somewhere a dove cooed its evening song. "Do you think it will always be like this?" Natalie asked. "This happy, this peaceful life has its challenges," Sam said honestly. "There will be hard times, sad times, times when we struggle. But yes, I think we will always have this, the core of it. The love, the family, the knowing that we chose each other and we keep choosing each other every day. That does not go away just because things get difficult." "I choose you," Natalie said, turning in his arms to face him. "Every day, every moment I choose you, and I always will." "And I choose you," Sam replied, kissing her gently. From that moment in Rawhide until the day I die, I will always choose you." As the years continued to pass, they kept their promise to each other. Through droughts and difficult seasons, through children's illnesses and the normal trials of life, they chose each other. They built a legacy together, not just in the successful ranch but in the strong, loving family they raised. Thomas grew into a fine young man, taking over more and more of the ranch operations as Sam grew older. He married at 23 to a local girl named Emma, and they gave Sam and Natalie their first grandchildren. Clara became a teacher, opening a small school near Prescott where she taught not just reading and arithmetic, but also music and art. Matthew joined the Territorial Rangers, dedicating himself to keeping the peace and protecting settlers. Sarah married a doctor and moved to Phoenix, though she visited frequently with her own growing family through all of it. Sam and Natalie remained devoted to each other. They grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces gaining lines, their bodies slowing down. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, deepened by decades of shared experiences, strengthened by weathering life's storms together. On their 35th wedding anniversary in 1914, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The original cabin was still standing, maintained as a guest house and a reminder of their humble beginnings. The main house had been expanded twice and was now large enough to accommodate the entire family when they came to visit. Sam, now in his late 50s but still strong and capable, stood with Natalie on the porch, watching their family gathered in the yard. There were children everywhere, grandchildren ranging from infants to teenagers, along with Thomas and Emma's oldest who had just turned 20. "We did all right, did not we?" Sam said, his arm around Natalie's waist. "We did better than all right," Natalie replied, leaning into him. "We did extraordinary. Look at all of this, Sam. Look at what we built from that one moment of courage and kindness in Rawhide. You were the courageous one. I just helped. You were brave too. Brave enough to intervene, brave enough to offer a stranger help, brave enough to marry a woman you barely knew and trust that it would work out. I knew you well enough. I knew you were strong and kind and worth protecting. I knew that helping you was the right thing to do. And I knew, maybe from that very first moment, that I could love you." "Did you really know that you could love me?" "I think so. Not the way I love you now, after 35 years of marriage and building a life together. But I saw something in you that called to something in me. We recognized each other, two survivors who deserved better than what life had given us so far." Thomas approached the porch, now a man in his mid-30s with children of his own. "Father, Mother, everyone is ready. Are you coming down for the celebration?" "We will be right there," Sam said. But they stayed on the porch for another moment, just the two of them, holding each other and remembering. "Thank you," Natalie said softly. "Thank you for telling me I could stop running. Thank you for giving me a reason to believe it." "Thank you for trusting me," Sam replied. "Thank you for taking that leap of faith, for accepting my help, for building this beautiful life with me. You are everything I never knew I needed, and I am grateful for you every single day." They kissed, long and sweet, the kind of kiss that comes from decades of love and partnership. Then they walked down into the yard hand in hand, ready to celebrate with their family, ready to continue the legacy they had started 35 years before in Rawhide. The celebration lasted into the evening, with music and dancing and storytelling. Sam and Natalie's grandchildren begged to hear the story of how their grandparents met, and Sam obliged, telling the tale with dramatic flair that made Natalie laugh. "Your grandmother was the bravest woman in the Arizona Territory," he told the children. "She ran from danger with nothing but hope and $3,000 that she rightfully deserved. And well, I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time to help her. "Tell us about the sheriff," one grandchild demanded. "Tell us how you lied to protect grandmother." "I did not lie," Sam corrected with a smile. "I just did not tell the whole truth. There is a difference. And I would do it again in a heartbeat, because your grandmother needed protecting, and I was not about to let anyone hurt her." Natalie watched Sam with their grandchildren gathered around him, saw the love and respect in their young faces, and felt her heart swell with gratitude. This was what they had built together. Not just a successful ranch or a financial legacy, but a family bound by love and respect, and the knowledge that they would always protect and support each other. As the sun set and the celebration continued, Natalie found herself standing apart from the group for a moment, just taking it all in. Sam noticed and came to stand beside her. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I am perfect," Natalie said. "I was just thinking about that day in Rawhide, about how terrified I was, how certain I was that my life was over. I could never have imagined this, Sam. I could never have dreamed that one act of courage, one moment of trust, would lead to all of this." "I am glad you were brave enough to run," Sam said. "And I am glad I was there to tell you that you could stop running. Because you were right, everything good in my life started that day. You gave me purpose and love and a family. You gave me everything." They stood together watching their family, their legacy, the proof that two broken people can heal each other and build something beautiful. The Arizona sky darkened above them, stars beginning to appear, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled its lonely song. But Sam and Natalie were not lonely. They would never be lonely again. They had found each other in the dusty streets of Rawhide, had built a life together on a mountain in Arizona, and had created a family that would carry on long after they were gone. Years later, when Sam passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 75, Natalie grieved deeply, but not hopelessly. They had been married for 54 years, had raised 4 children, had watched countless grandchildren and great-grandchildren come into the world. Sam had lived to see the Arizona Territory become a state, had seen their ranch become one of the most respected in the region, had seen their love story become a legend that people told to illustrate the power of courage and kindness. Natalie lived another 5 years after Sam's death, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, tending the garden Sam had planted for her decades before, and walking the land they had built together. She never forgot that moment in Rawhide, never stopped being grateful for the lonely cowboy who had told her she could stop running. When she finally passed at the age of 84, surrounded by family, her last words were about Sam, about how she would see him soon, about how she had never stopped loving him from that first moment to this last. They buried her beside Sam on the ranch they had built together, under the ponderosa pines they both loved, with a headstone that read, "Natalie Wright, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She ran toward hope and found home." And their family continued, generation after generation, carrying on the legacy of courage and love that had started with a fleeing woman and a lonesome cowboy who said, "You can stop running now." The ranch remained in the family, passed down through Thomas's line, each generation adding their own contributions while maintaining the core values Sam and Natalie had established. The original cabin was preserved as a historical landmark, and the story of Sam and Natalie Wright became part of local legend, told and retold as an example of how love and courage can transform lives. In the end, Natalie had been right to run, and Sam had been right to help her. That one moment of desperate courage meeting compassionate intervention had created ripples that spread through decades, affecting not just 2 lives but hundreds, shaping a family and a community in ways that neither of them could have predicted. They had started with nothing but hope, but they had built everything that mattered: love, family, home. And in doing so, they proved that sometimes running toward an uncertain future is the bravest thing you can do, and sometimes the most important words anyone can hear are these: you can stop running now.